Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business. We've designed this TV show to educate you in simple to understand plain English ways for complex legal terms, to help you understand why you undertake certain legal aspects of your business, and to help you develop a plan for the future success of your business. Did you know that any business owner is on average 7 months away from losing everything? And that is the average time that it takes for a successful business to fold when an aspect of their business is not set up correctly. Have you ever wanted to get legal advice but didn't understand what was going on? And do you feel like there's a divide between lawyers and their clients? If that's so, then this TV show is for you. We've designed the show to empower you and your business with the knowledge and tools to help ensure that those problems that so many businesses encounter don't happen to you. Business Legal Lifecycle TV delivers a twice-weekly show focusing on the legal aspects of your business. At lunchtime on Mondays, we present Fast Fix Monday, a quick 5 to 10 minute show to give you some actionable steps to consider for this week in your business. And at lunchtime on Wednesdays, we present our in-depth show. It's generally between 30 minutes to an hour to go through the complicated legal aspects of your business in a simple to understand and plain English way. That can be through educational pieces or interviews with experts in the fields. We welcome you to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, and here's our show.
Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV episode for this Wednesday. I'm Craig Mason, one of the founders, and I've got with me
Jeremy Stratton. How is everyone?
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about asset protection strategies for intellectual property, or shortened to IP, which is obviously short for intellectual property. We're going to do things a little bit differently today. I'm going to basically interview and grill Jeremy about this topic. We're going to talk about separate holding entities, license agreements, and why protecting intellectual property in the business is actually important. So, first of all, Jeremy, why are we talking about this now? We've spoken previously about starting up your business and the structures and all those sorts of things. Why aren't we talking about how to protect intellectual property at the beginning when we set up our company or our structure?
Yeah, so I was going to get rid of the it's better just get rid of the without names on there. People who are watching this will know our names. It's a really interesting question. It's something that we get a lot as to why we structure the business legal life cycle the way that we do. So anyone who's seen the business legal life cycle, and I can put up an image of it, I'll just put that up overlay of Craig and I right now, will know that phase 5 is protecting intellectual property. Now, and as Craig said, why do we do it now? And the reason that we do it at this point is really from a cost-benefit analysis for a startup business. So in the past, in the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, even the noughties, you could start up a business and you basically needed $20, $30, $50,000 worth of startup capital. That's all changed with the advent of the internet, and we're now in a stage where we can open up a business with 3 things: an idea, a laptop, and an internet connection. So what that means is that people are starting up businesses using the agile, the lean principles, and they don't have the money to spend thousands of dollars on legal advice straight away. So as Craig alluded to, one of the reasons that we actually even started the business legal life cycle was to give people a more realistic idea about when they should do things in their business from a legal point of view. Now, protecting intellectual property is probably the most controversial of all those topics, don't you think, Craig?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, because as Craig said, the traditional legal advice, which is not wrong, and don't get me wrong, we're not saying that the legal advice is wrong, we're just saying that it's impractical, would be to start up the business and start up the intellectual property and your asset protection strategies that we're going to talk about today at the beginning. Spend the money at the beginning. Now, that's all well and good if you've got tens of thousands of dollars to start a business. But as I said before, where you don't have or you don't need to start a business with those kind of funds. You do need to be a little bit more pragmatic. So protecting intellectual property, protecting your assets is at this point. So what we're going to talk about today will be the strategies around asset protection. But by this phase in the business legal lifecycle, and I've taken down the business legal lifecycle image, but you've had the conception, you've gone through phase one, you've conceived of your idea, you've gone through startup, which is probably one of the most challenging phases, and started up your entities, you've entered into your leases, you've potentially done some asset protection at that point of view if you wanted to, if you were minded to. You've then gone and got some clients, so made sure that your business idea is actually a minimum viable product, and then you've actually then got some employees. So once you've got some clients, you've got a minimum viable product. Once you've got some employees, you've got something that's worthwhile protecting, and that's why we put the intellectual property in phase 5. So put it at a point where you've actually got something to protect, something that's going to build and help you scale the business. So that's the reason. That's a long-winded reason as to why we put it at phase 5. But it's to be more practical is the real and the main reason that we do it.
And so, obviously that's answering the question about why you're sort of leaving it to phase 5.
Mm.
But once you get to phase 5, you develop some property.
Mm.
Why is it then actually important to protect it?
Yeah, well, once again, this is something that a lot of people miss and that they don't realise, is that the reason that it's important is that once you've actually got an asset, a business asset that's worthwhile protecting, if something goes wrong with that asset or that business or yourself or your family personally, then you could actually lose everything. So to give you an example, if you've got a law firm, we may as well use a law firm because we run a law firm as well as business legal lifecycle. If you've got a law firm that operates a traditional law firm business and it holds intellectual property, if that law firm for some reason shuts down because one of the business owners gets sick or their family members get sick, then they could lose all that intellectual property. So it protects, but by having a separate legal entity and protecting your IP, you're actually protecting what you've built from being attacked in the case of where you get sued, where the company goes into liquidation, where you might go bankrupt. That intellectual property is protected. You also have the advantage of asset protection and also being able to income stream through to different entities, and that can be actually good from a tax point of view.
Okay. Right. So you're protecting your intellectual property at phase 5. When you talk about intellectual property, what are you actually saying you could put in, for instance, the separate holding entity that you spoke about as the strategy to protect it?
Yeah, well, intellectual property are really the parts of the business, the intangible parts of the business that you may not realise that are assets of your business, but really they're the thing that's actually worth something in your business. So you might have a business and you might have equipment, you might have equipment, machinery, you might have printing presses, you might have whatever, physical equipment. All of those assets are all assets that will be worth something when you buy them and they'll depreciate in value. Your intellectual property is the real value in your business. It's the thing that you'll be selling in the future. And it's a good idea, and we'll talk about this more next week when we're talking about setting up the systems in place for sale. But you always need to be ready to go to sell the business. And protecting your intellectual property is about protecting yourself for the future. So things that can be included are things like trademarks. So any registered or unregistered trademark that you have for the business, that's intellectual property. Patents. So if you've got a unique system or way of doing your business, then that's intellectual property. Create other creative work. So I often use this example of the book, the Business Legal Lifecycle. That's a book. That's intellectual property, and the concept of the business legal lifecycle that is unique and is something that's owned by an asset, and that's intellectual property. So the good way and probably the plain English way to think about this is that it's really the intellectual property are the assets that you can't see. They're the assets that are real, but they're the real value of what you've built in your business.
And can you give an example of where this strategy's worked really well, or an example where if business had this strategy in place, the value of the business would have been increased, or they would have been able to protect something in their business. You have an example about either a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, so just to be clear, what the strategy that we're talking about is separate legal entities. So most businesses will hold all their intellectual property in one asset. So and the idea of this is to move that asset, that intellectual property, into a separate asset and license it across. So there's quite a few examples that we could use, but the first one that I'll use is a company that provides professional services to employers for their employee matters. So what they've done is they've generated a bunch of intellectual property in their business. They've generated how-to guides, they've generated webinars, they've generated all this intellectual property, which is all really valuable stuff. They held that in an entity that actually traded their business. So if that business could be attacked or be sued, or if something goes wrong with either of the owners, then they could lose all that intellectual property. What we've done is actually separate that and have the structure and the information held in a separate legal entity, and it then licenses that across to the company. So what that means is that their intellectual property is protected, and that if they got sued, and obviously no one wants to get sued, but we're talking about the worst case scenario. If they did get sued, then they'd be able to protect themselves and potentially get rid of the trading entity and set up a new one and a new trading entity. Other examples can be really simple. That's a complicated example, but some people say will buy equipment or other intellectual property as well and put that in a separate holding entity and license that across. Because what that lets them do, Craig, is it lets them pay a license fee to the entity that holds the intellectual property. And from a tax point of view, that can allow you to tax plan better and put more income into the other entity.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's how license agreements would be relevant in this instance. So you've got two companies, you've got your trading and your separate holding entity. And so how does that relationship work with the license agreement? So
a license agreement, but for anyone who doesn't know what a license agreement is, a license agreement is basically an agreement that says you don't own this intellectual property, you're going to license it to another entity to actually use that intellectual property. So what the license agreement does, it can be pretty short, 5 or 6 pages, and it actually gives the right to the other business to use the intellectual property in their business on a day-to-day basis. And so what they do is, what you'd have is some sort of royalty fee, because it's a valuable asset. It's an asset that you can actually use in the business. So it's something that's worth some money. So you have a license agreement that allows you to shift that money across to the entity that actually owns the intellectual property.
Okay. So, all right. So the businesses, they've got their two entities, they've got license agreements, they're getting all that in place. The obvious question at this stage would be, what's the actual cost to the business? From a legal, accounting, other taxes. Like, what's the real cost normally to a business when they're at this stage?
Yeah. So this is a question that we get asked a lot, and it's a very important question because it does affect what the decision of someone to go ahead and set up a separate legal entity to hold their IP. The costs depend on the value of the intellectual property, and one of the reasons that we put this at phase 5, and I didn't say it before because I wanted to talk about it at this point, because I knew you were going to bring up costs, Craig, is the fact that when you're at this point, yes, you've got a minimal viable product, yes, you've got employees, but normally the actual intellectual property itself isn't worth a lot. So there are costs like capital gains tax. Intellectual property is an asset, as I've said many times. Assets, when you transfer them, have to be transferred from one entity to another. That's a capital gains tax event, not to get too technical with the tax terms, but it's a capital gains tax event. That whatever the value was at the beginning and whatever the value is when you transfer it, there's a capital gain and you have to pay tax on that. A good accountant and a good valuer will make sure that the value is as low as possible. And the reason that you do it at this stage is because you want to get that value as low as you can and not pay too much capital gains tax. Sorry about that, everyone. We had a technical issue with the program that we're running this through, Ycast. Really good program, but it decided to crash out on us. So we'll continue off where we were. So we're just talking, Craig, through the costs and everything else, and you were asking me a question about those costs and moving forward.
Yeah, so, as a summary, we've started our business, we've got a company set up, we're getting successful, making some sales, we've got some intellectual property, and we've reached sort of phase 5 in the business legal life cycle. So you would say the reason to do it now is what? What are the main sort of factors that you say to do it now?
Well, the main factors are knowing that you've got that minimum viable product, knowing that you've got something to actually protect. That's the really crucial part. So once you've got the minimum viable product, as I said before, you've got you know that the business is going to do what you want it to do, then that's the time that you're ready to actually protect your intellectual property. You don't do it before. It's a costly process to do it before. It's not worth it. And so, it's better to just wait till you're at this phase and then get it done at this point in time once you've got that minimum viable product.
Right. Okay, so strategy is obviously separate legal holding entity. You've got your license agreements, which you spoke about. What other strategies or ways are there to protect the intellectual property that you've built up when you reach phase 5?
There's not really any other way of protecting it. People will tell you that there are, but the separate legal entity is really the only way to actually protect yourself going forward. Really, if you want to protect your intellectual property, do it, but make sure that you're protecting yourself and that you've got that separate legal entity, because there's not really any other way to go about doing it.
Right. And so if someone was sort of thinking about it, they're in what they think is phase 5, what sort of things do they need to get together and consider before they came to see, an advisor, a lawyer, whoever it might be? What's sort of 5 things they need to get ready to go?
Well, the first thing they need to think about is, what is that intellectual property? So what are they actually protecting? What are they actually going to be putting into their separate legal entity? They need to have a think about that. They need to be able to list it out, and they need to be able to describe it and show who actually owns it. Then from there, they need to think about the going forward, what they're actually going to do, and what they're actually willing to do from a cost point of view, and what they're willing to do from a tax point of view. The next one would be to actually have some questions about the separate legal entity structure for their accountant.
Well, that was some really good answers, Jeremy. I think everyone would have got a lot of excellent information and valuable information out of those questions and answers. Now, for the diligent observer, there was a keyword, I believe, at the start of the episode. What's the prize if someone gets in first with that one, Jeremy?
Well, let's be fair and give it to the first 3 people. So the first 3 people to write the code word in the messages or to us will receive a consultation in relation to their intellectual property. So that's usually valued at $330 Australian dollars. We'll sit down and go through your intellectual property and give you some advice about what you need to do to protect it for $330. So, not for $330, $330 worth of value for free if you're one of the first 3 people to put the code word in there. And can I just say apologies to anyone who was watching this live about the problems with the feed. Obviously, there's some technical issues with this program. It's a new version of Wirecast that we're using that is having some problems. So we'll endeavour to get that fixed and not be a problem next time.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so that wraps up today. We're talking about asset protection strategies for IP. Monday, we'll be back for our Fast Fix Monday, which will be on a similar intellectual property theme. So join us then. Thank you for attending. I was Craig Mason.
And I'm Jeremy Stratton, and we'll see you on Monday. Thanks very much.